I don't know what I expected when I boarded that train to Chicago. Maybe a boring ride, a few podcasts, and a stale sandwich from the dining car. What I didn't expect was for my entire life to unravel because of a stranger with nice hands and a charming smile. We met because of a delay. Our train hit something on the tracks, nothing major, just enough to strand us in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. They bussed us to this tiny town that felt like it hadn't seen a crowd in decades. The diner was full, so I ended up in a little bar next door, scrolling through my phone and sipping something forgettable. And that's where Kenny slid into my life. Two stools away, a duffel bag at his feet, and this goofy grin that made me forget I was annoyed. He made a joke about how the universe must want us to appreciate small-town America. I laughed. He was tall with that messy, dark blonde hair and hands that looked like they knew how to build things. Or at least fix a leaky faucet. I've always been a sucker for hands like that. I don't even know why. We talked for hours. He told me he was heading to a job interview, sick of the corporate world, ready to build something meaningful. It sounded noble. I told him I worked in logistics, nothing fancy, but steady. He made it seem like that was admirable, like being grounded was a superpower, and somehow that conversation on bar stools turned into a coffee date when I got back home. Then another. Then he started staying over more than he didn't. When he said he didn't get the job, I didn't think twice. It's a hard market. But he always had something else lined up, another lead, another maybe. It was always just one step away. 6 months and his lease ended. My place was bigger, closer to downtown, and I was already paying for most of our nights out since he was between things. When he suggested moving in, it felt like the logical next steps. I mean, we were a team, right? The first month, he paid rent on time. By the second, he was late. The third, he had a whole story, some delayed payment from a freelance gig. He'd make it up next month. I didn't push. I could cover the rent alone. Barely, but I told myself this was temporary. He cooked dinner, cleaned, gave me back rubs when I came home tired from working overtime. That counted for something, right? Except the stories kept coming. A client was late, a project fell through. The startup he was consulting for had accounting issues. Always something, always a solution just out of reach. Meanwhile, my bank account got thinner. I started picking up weekend shifts, canceled my gym membership, stopped going out. But Kenny, he still managed to buy new games, go out with friends, and somehow always had drinks in the fridge that I didn't remember paying for but did. My friend Jay saw through it before I did. We were having coffee, and I mentioned skipping a concert because money was tight. She raised an eyebrow and asked, "So, how long are you planning to bankroll this guy?" I laughed it off, said we were a team, that relationships had ups and downs, that he'd do the same for me if the roles were reversed. But the word stuck, like a splinter I couldn't pull out. I started watching more closely. He used my card for little things without asking. Our grocery bill doubled, but the fridge was always half empty. When I brought up marriage casually, just a comment after my cousin got engaged, his face twisted like I'd suggested a joint tax audit. Said he wasn't ready, that we had a good thing. Why ruin it with pressure? I should have seen it then, but I wanted to believe we were still building something. Then things got better. He started going out more, networking, he said, meeting potential clients, reconnecting with old colleagues. I wanted to believe I really did. Then one Friday, my friend Em invited me to dinner. Kenny had a networking event that night anyway, so I went, got there early. Em kept glancing at her phone and giving me these weird looks. I didn't understand until her boyfriend casually mentioned seeing Kenny the night before with his fiancée. He said, just like that, like it was nothing. I must have looked like I'd been slapped because everyone at the table went quiet. Em pulled up a photo on Instagram. Some woman I'd never seen, blonde pretty, holding up a hand with a ring under string lights. I said yes. The caption read, "Can't believe I get to marry my soulmate." I stared at that screen until the room blurred, scrolled through their photos, posts going back weeks. A beach weekend from when Kenny told me he was visiting his parents, date nights, hot for my man. I left dinner without finishing my drink, went home, opened our shared credit account. There it was, hotel charges, jewelry store receipts, restaurants I'd never been to. He'd proposed with my money, lived in my home, lied with every breath. That night when he walked in like nothing had happened, kicked off his shoes, grabbed a beer I'd bought. I asked him where he'd been. Networking, he said. I asked if he got engaged recently. He blinked, then smirked. Look, can we not do this now? I don't owe you anything. And then he said it, that thing I'll never forget. You really thought I'd give you a ring? You're the kind of girl men settle for when they fail. Everything inside me snapped. I didn't even feel my hand move. 1 second he was smirking, and the next I'd hit him. Not hard enough to hurt him, but enough to knock the beer from his hand. It splashed across his shirt, dripping down to the floor. Then came the slap, sharp, loud. Final. The red mark bloomed on his cheek like proof that I still existed, that I was still real after everything he'd done to make me feel invisible. I told him to get out. He laughed at first, said I was overreacting, that I'd regret this, that I'd be crawling back. I didn't even answer. Just grabbed his backpack and stuffed it with random shirts. His laptop charger, whatever I could grab, I threw it at him and said if he wasn't gone in 5 minutes, I'd call Daria and show her every receipt. That got him moving. He mumbled something on his way out, something about coming back for the rest of his stuff. I told him to take it up with the landlord because I was done. The next day, I changed the locks, paid $170 I didn't have for a locksmith just so I could breathe again. I dragged all his remaining things, clothes, cologne, that god-awful tub of protein powder into trash bags and left them by the dumpster. I sent him one text, "You have 24 hours, then it's going to Goodwill." He showed up right as I was dragging out the last bag, of course, right on cue. He looked like he hadn't slept, same clothes as the night before, hair unwashed, eyes wide. I wondered for a second where he'd slept, then I reminded myself, not my problem anymore. He tried to talk, said I didn't understand, said Daria wasn't what I thought, that he was going to break it off, that he'd made a mistake. I kept walking past him like he was air. When he grabbed my arm, I yanked away so hard I scraped my elbow against the brick wall. "If you touch me again," I said, "I will call the cops." That finally shut him up, but the damage, it was already done, not just emotionally, financially. I was wrecked. That night, I opened every statement, every account, every card. At first, I thought it was around $1,700 in unauthorized charges. But the deeper I looked, the worse it got. $5,400, he'd been bleeding me dry for months. Little by little, subscriptions I didn't recognize, withdrawals I couldn't explain. My fridge had been full of empty promises and frozen lies. I called the credit card company. The rep was kind but firm. Most charges were too old to dispute. He was, after all, an authorized user. That word stuck in my throat like a curse. Authorized, I'd handed him the knife he used to cut me open. The next few days were a blur. I called in sick to work. Not because I was actually sick, but because I couldn't stand to face anyone. Couldn't focus, couldn't smile and pretend everything was fine. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I lost my job. Laid off company restructure. They said it like it was nothing, handed me a packet and a severance check that barely covered my next rent. I held it together until I made it to the bathroom stall. Then I fell apart in total silence, knees against the door, hands shaking. I called my mom that night. We're not close. She lives in Florida with her second husband, and our conversations are usually surface level. But I just needed someone, anyone. She was sympathetic in that distant kind of way, said I never should have let a man move in without a ring, suggested I come home, sleep on the pull-out couch until I got back on my feet. Hard pass. Instead, I sent out 73 job applications in 2 weeks, got 6 callbacks, 0 offers. My email became a graveyard of polite rejections. My routine shrank. Wake up, apply cheap lunch, apply more. Long walk to avoid turning on the heat, dinner of whatever I could scrape together, sleep, repeat. By the end of the month, I had less than $100 in my account. I sold things I loved. My watch. Some clothes tried to sell my TV, but nobody wanted to pay more than $50. And then Kenny texted from a new number, said Daria had left him, said he was sorry, said he needed to explain. I blocked him, but my hands were shaking. Not because I missed him, but because I finally realized how easily someone could break you without lifting a finger. Rent was late. My landlord left voicemails. My lights were shut off for 48 hours. I ate plain rice for 3 days straight. I stood in line at a food bank and accepted a box of cans and stale bread from a volunteer with a cheerful smile. When I got home that night, I sat on the floor and cried into a jar of peanut butter. This wasn't just rock bottom, it was the layer under the rock. But then something shifted. An email. A small warehouse needed temporary help. Physical work, $13 an hour. Brutal shifts, but I said yes. It was the first yes I'd gotten in a long, long time. The warehouse job was humbling. 8 to 10 hours on my feet, lifting boxes, scanning inventory, working in a massive building that was either freezing cold or sweltering hot, depending on the section I got assigned to. I went home every night with aching knees and stiff fingers. I smelled like cardboard and sweat, and for the first few weeks I came home so exhausted I couldn't even cry. But I paid part of my rent. Not all of it, but enough to buy me time. Then one afternoon, I came home to an eviction notice taped to my door. My heart sank before I even read the words. I knew what it was the moment I saw that bold red notice, 30 days to pay in full or vacate. I sat down on the floor of my kitchen and just stared at it. I couldn't even feel panic anymore. I was so used to the ache that it had dulled into background noise, and then there was a knock at the door. It was my neighbor. We'd barely spoken before, but she had seen the notice. She didn't pity me. She didn't offer charity. Instead, she asked if I was looking for a roommate. Her cousin Rosalie needed a place to stay temporarily, and if we split the rent 3 ways, maybe we could all stay afloat. I said yes before she finished her sentence. Rosalie moved in 2 days later. Quiet girl, clean, paid her rent up front, didn't ask questions about why I sometimes skipped meals or cried in the shower. She gave me space, and for that I was grateful. We weren't friends, not really, but we shared the space in peace. And with her help, I managed to pay enough back rent to cancel the eviction notice. I wasn't okay yet, but I was no longer drowning. Then one morning, about 3 months after I kicked Kenny out, I was rushing to catch the bus to work and literally ran into someone on the sidewalk. It was him, Kenani. He looked different, like life had hit him harder than it hit me. He was wearing a fast food uniform, the kind with the ugly polo shirt and visor. He had an old beat-up phone and bags under his eyes. He said he'd been looking for me, that he was sorry, that he'd made mistakes. I pushed past him without a word. That night, I didn't sleep, not because I missed him, but because I realized something terrifying. He still had power over my peace. The sight of him, his voice still had the ability to rattle me. I jammed a chair under the doorknob and spent the night wide-eyed and shivering. The next morning, there was a letter in my mailbox. No return address, no stamp, just my name written in Kenny's handwriting. I tore it up without opening it, dropped the pieces into 3 different trash bins on my way to the bus. But that wasn't the end. For the next 2 weeks, he started showing up, not saying anything, just being there. Across the street from my building, at the laundromat, at the bus stop. Sometimes he waved, sometimes he just stared. And always I ignored him. Back pain, emotional exhaustion, hunger, all of that I could handle, but fear. That was the hardest part, the feeling that no matter what I did, he could still follow me. One night I came home barely able to stand. My back had given out halfway through my shift, and I had popped way too many ibuprofen just to make it through the day. When I walked through the door, Rosalie was stirring a pot of something warm on the stove. She offered me a bowl. I don't even know what it was. Soup, maybe? But it was the first real food I'd had in days that didn't come from a can or a food bank. We sat at the table, and for the first time we talked. Turns out she had her own Kenny, different name. Same story. It was weirdly comforting to hear her say things I'd said to myself in the mirror at 2 a.m. We weren't alone. And that mattered. From then on, we shared dinners when our schedules lined up. Nothing fancy, mostly pantry scraps and discount grocery items, but it felt like healing. Then in late November, I got sick. Not a little sick. Fever spiking bones, aching, can't get out of bed kind of sick. I should have gone to urgent care, but I had $27 in my account and a shift I couldn't afford to miss. So I bundled up, dragged myself to the warehouse, and tried to act normal. I fainted at the bus stop on the way home. Some teenage girl helped me up, asked if I needed an ambulance. I said no. I don't remember much after that. Just flashes of cold air, the spinning world, the ache in every cell of my body. Rosalie found me collapsed in the hallway. She carried me into bed, fed me water and crackers, sat beside me all night, changing out cold washcloths like it was the most natural thing in the world. When I came to the next morning, she told me she'd called my job. Told them I had pneumonia, that I wouldn't be back for at least 3 days. I panicked. We can't afford that, I croaked. They'll fire me. Her eyes were steady. No job is worth dying for. And somehow, she made them listen, marched into the warehouse, demanded to speak to someone in HR, found out even temp workers qualified for 5 sick days, 5 whole days of paid rest. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start breathing again. That night when Rosalie got home from her own shift, I broke down. Not from pain, but from relief. Because for the first time in a long, long time, someone fought for me. Coming back to work after being sick felt surreal. People who had barely spoken to me before started checking in, offering me water, reminding me to take breaks. I didn't know if Rosalie had told them what happened or if word had just spread that the quiet girl from shipping had nearly collapsed from exhaustion. But for the first time, I wasn't invisible. I still hurt physically and emotionally, but it was different now. Less like drowning, more like wading through cold water. Still hard, still heavy, but I could breathe. Kenny hadn't disappeared completely. His messages came in waves, new numbers, long texts, rambling, apologies, blame shifting, begging I blocked each one without responding. Jay kept telling me to change my number, but the $35 fee was still too much for me to justify, so I blocked and blocked and blocked again. Every time a new number popped up, my stomach turned. Not from sadness, from disgust, from fear that he'd show up again with that same entitled smirk. Thinking a cheap apology could fix what he broke, then came December. The warehouse doubled down on hours holiday season. Orders skyrocketed, and so did my pain. My back screamed every time I bent down. My teeth ached constantly. I'd needed a root canal for months, but dental work was laughably out of reach, so I swallowed ibuprofen like vitamins and kept moving. One freezing morning, I was waiting for the bus, hopping side to side to stay warm. An older woman struck up a conversation. Just normal bus stop chatter. The weather, the holidays. She said she worked at a nearby medical office and that they were overwhelmed with supply deliveries lately. I don't know what possessed me, but I blurted out, "Are they hiring?" She blinked, surprised, then smiled, gave me the name of the office manager, and told me to drop by. That same day, I skipped my lunch break and walked straight to that office with my resume in hand. Well, a printed sheet from the library smudged at the corners, barely held together by a paperclip. The manager looked like she hadn't had a full night's sleep in years. She glanced at my resume, raised an eyebrow at logistics, and asked how soon I could start. I nearly cried on the spot. It wasn't full-time, just 20 hours a week to start medical supply inventory, restocking some front desk help if needed. But it paid more than the warehouse, and the hours were flexible. I said yes so fast, I think I startled her. That week, I started juggling both jobs, mornings at the medical office, evenings at the warehouse. It was brutal. I came home with blisters on my feet and throbbing in my skull. But for the first time in nearly a year, I could pay my bills. I didn't have to choose between food and electricity. Rosalie noticed. She started cooking dinner for both of us without asking. Just a bowl of soup waiting on the stove or a grilled cheese sandwich on a paper towel by the microwave. We still weren't the type of roommates who shared deep secrets under fairy lights, but there was something solid and gentle between us, a quiet understanding. In mid-January, I finally had enough saved to quit the warehouse job. My last day, I turned in my badge with no emotion, no nostalgia, just relief. One of my coworkers, someone I barely knew, gave me a hug and said, "Good for you, nobody should have to stay here." I smiled the whole walk home. The medical office job wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. The manager started giving me more hours. By February, I was working nearly full-time. I even had a tiny desk in the back next to a dusty filing cabinet. It was mine. With every paycheck I chipped away at the debt, Kenny left behind $20 here, $50 there, sometimes only the minimums, but the balances started to shrink. My control started to return. We repainted the apartment one Sunday afternoon. Rosalie and I covered the dingy beige with a soft gray we found on sale. The place felt lighter, like it wasn't just a reminder of everything I'd lost, it was becoming something new. Then came Valentine's Day. I didn't plan to do anything. Rosalie had plans with her boyfriend, so I ordered a frozen pizza, queued up a rom-com I'd seen a dozen times, and curled up in my blanket with low expectations. Halfway through the movie, there was a knock at the door. Not a soft knock, a pounding. I froze. I knew who it was. No one else would knock like that. I tiptoed to the peephole, Kenny holding flowers and what looked like a small gift box. I didn't open the door. He called my name, said he could see the light under the door, that he just wanted to talk, that he wanted to make things right. I stayed silent, still cold. After a minute, he sighed. Something hit the floor. Then footsteps. I waited another 10 before cracking the door open. On the floor sat a bouquet of grocery store roses, a small velvet box, and a card. I should have thrown them all away, but curiosity is a stubborn thing. The box held a ring, not an engagement ring, just a cheap silver band with a tiny stone. The card read, "I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to start making it right. This is the ring I should have given you instead of her. I've changed. Please call me." I didn't feel anything, not hate, not sadness, just emptiness. He thought a $30 ring could fix $400 of damage, 2 job losses, 3 hunger-filled nights, and a year's worth of emotional trauma. I dropped the ring and card into the trash next to the elevator, went back inside, reheated my pizza, and finished my movie in peace. The next morning he texted, "Did you get the gift?" This time I replied, "Move on," then blocked the number. February slipped into March quietly. No more texts, no more knocks on the door, no more Kenny sightings across the street or at bus stops. It felt like breathing after holding my breath for a year. At the medical office, my hours increased again. The office manager even gave me a little raise. Not much, just enough to buy the good laundry detergent without guilt. Rosalie and I renewed the lease, even though she was now spending most nights at her boyfriend's place. I wasn't thrilled about the extra responsibility, but it didn't scare me anymore. I had a plan now. I even started saving, just a little 20 bucks here, 40 there. But for the first time since everything fell apart, my savings account wasn't sitting at zero. And then one morning, I got a text from Jay. Just ran into Kenny at a coffee shop. He said he's moving to Pittsburgh, asked about you, said it respectfully. I stared at my screen for a while, not because I missed him. That part of me had withered long ago, but because I realized something important, I didn't care. I didn't feel the urge to ask more. I didn't wonder how he was doing. I didn't even roll my eyes. I just didn't care. Which is why it threw me completely when a week later, I opened my apartment door and saw him standing there. Not dramatic, not pounding, just standing quietly holding a small gift bag and looking well different. He looked cleaner, like he'd been taking care of himself. New clothes, no beard, no desperate energy. I froze. He must have seen it in my eyes because he raised both hands quickly and said, "I'm not staying, I'm leaving town, I just wanted to drop something off." My body stayed tense, but I didn't slam the door. I took the bag, didn't invite him in. Inside was a small box and an envelope. The envelope held $500 in cash. The box, the ring, the one from Daria's Instagram, the one he bought with my money. He explained quickly and awkwardly that after Daria left him, she threw the ring at him. He'd kept it, meant to pawn it, but never did. Said he realized it wasn't his to sell, it was technically mine. Since I paid for it, he said I could keep it, sell it, throw it into the river, whatever I wanted, that he was going to Pittsburgh for a new job, and that he'd send more payments when he could. Then he said something I didn't expect. I'm sorry. Not just for the money, for everything. Especially the way I spoke to you that night. You didn't deserve that. You deserved better. I hope you find it, or maybe already have. And then he left, just a wave, a quiet goodbye, and gone. I stared at the bag in my hands for a long time. Then I walked it to my room, opened my laptop, and looked up a few local jewelers. The next day, I took the ring in. The appraiser examined it, gave me a number. Less than Kenny had paid, of course. The stone wasn't nearly as big as it looked online. The setting was basic, but it was still worth just under $1,000. I took the cash and walked straight to my bank, deposited every cent into savings. That night, Rosalie came home and found me cooking, real cooking, garlic and olive oil and pasta, not rice. She raised an eyebrow, and I just shrugged. Thought I'd try feeding you for once. We ate, we laughed, we opened a cheap bottle of wine and toasted to the stupid men we used to love. My tooth finally got fixed the next weekend. My mom had offered to cover the bill if I came to visit, so I flew down to Florida for 2 days. It was weird being in my childhood home again, hearing my stepdad go on about politics, pretending I didn't care. But I got through it. I smiled, I didn't cry, I got my tooth fixed. I came home and realized something. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't waiting for things to get worse, or better, or different. I was just living. I even went on a couple of dates. Nothing serious. Trust takes time to rebuild, but it was nice to sit across from someone and not feel like I had to earn my place at the table. Rosalie eventually moved in with her boyfriend. I found a new roommate through a coworker, a quiet grad student who pays on time and doesn't steal my leftovers. We coexist like grown-ups. The apartment feels different now, not haunted anymore. My back still aches on rainy days. My credit score is still recovering. And sometimes I double-check the lock on the door just in case. But I'm not broken, not anymore. Kenny might never send another dollar. He might spiral again or disappear completely. But that's not my story to carry. Not anymore. I've learned not to build my life on other people's promises. I'm building it on my own terms, little by little, brick by brick, quietly, steadily. And maybe one day when I look back, this won't feel like the time I lost everything, but the time I finally became someone new, someone stronger, someone free. So, if you were me, what would you have done? Would you have let him back in? Would you have burned the ring or sold it? Would you forgive, or would you like me finally choose yourself?